What is up, everybody? Brody here with Sew Yeah Quilting. This quilt behind me has a story and I'm going to tell it to you. Today in this tutorial, I'm going to be making this all-around quilt, and this quilt right here was the very first quilt ever made by one of our sweet sample makers here at Sew Yeah Quilting. I'm going to take you back on a little story here about this quilt. So a couple of months ago, we were looking for a new full-time sample maker to sew here at Sew Yeah. They make our samples for backdrops, or they make them for the backdrops for our shows, our in-store stuff, for our different stores, whatever it may be. So a few months ago, I had someone come in and say, I'm looking for a job. I know how to sew, but I've never quilted before. So I grabbed a layer cake and I grabbed some yardage and I handed it to her and I handed her a pattern and I said, if you can come back with this quilt made, you're hired. Lo and behold, she walks in with this quilt right here. It wasn't perfect. If you see it up close here, there's a few things that are wrinkled. There's a few things that aren't quite the perfect points, but she did it and you can too. So if you've never done a quilt with pinwheels, if you've never done a quilt with flying geese, this is the quilt to start on. Let's get started. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna choose your layer cake. Now, in her case, she didn't have a choice. I handed her that beautiful one. That is in bloom, I believe. This one right here is a Moda layer cake by Gingerbread called Woodland Wonder. So I'm gonna open this up here, and choosing your fabrics is all really just personal preference. You can choose things that are abstract, you can choose things that are bright, things that are more subtle colors. Layer cakes are a great option because you don't have to match up all your fabrics. They do that for you in the pack. So get your layer cake of choice, and I'm using a black background fabric. Again, choose whatever color you think is gonna look nice in your background. You're going to take your layer cake here and you're gonna do some pre-cutting. Now, there are a lot of little pieces that have to be cut, so don't let that scare you in the pattern, but you wanna make sure that's all done first. That way you can just be sewing later on in your making of this quilt. So, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to pre-cut this here, as well as pre-cut our background fabric. Follow the cutting instructions. Again, free pattern in the description below. I'm gonna get these cut and I'm gonna show you the easy construction. So I have some of our layer cake cut. I'm just gonna cut a handful of them so I can keep showing you guys here. And then I'm going to cut down our background fabric. You need 2.5-inch squares and 5-inch squares. So I've already cut a couple pieces off my bolts here, and I'm gonna just keep cutting these down. So we're gonna start out by making a simple flying geese. As you can see, there's a lot of them in here, and this quilt mixes and matches based on what you want and the preference you want. You can turn some of these the other direction, you can run them the other direction, it's up to you, okay? So we're gonna start by making a couple of them. So we're gonna start by grabbing our rectangles that we've cut, 2 of your squares and 1 of your layer cake rectangles, and we're gonna draw a line down the center of these so we can make a nice seam. So I'm gonna grab a pen, I'm gonna draw a seam here. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna set this here, and my line is running this direction. I'm gonna go ahead and sew right on that line that we have made. With a solid, there's not really a right side, so I'm just gonna line it up here, and we're gonna sew right down that piece. We finished our first one here. Oh, we got some serious long threads here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna trim this down to 1/4 inch. So I'm gonna line on my ruler, right down the seam, and trim this little piece off here. Once we've done that, we're going to press open, and then we're gonna do another square on the other side, making our flying geese. So I'm gonna come over here to the iron. So pressed open, gonna grab the other square that I've already marked, set it right on top here, and create the other wing to our flying geese. Now we're gonna repeat the process again. Gonna trim this down 1/4 inch. I just sewed that on the wrong side. We're gonna restart. Hold tight. Wasn't that easy? See that? And now we're gonna trim, and we are going to get ourselves a perfect little flying goose. Ta-da! You need like some fireworks or something in the background. That's what it should look like. So let me iron this open. This is what it should have looked like on the last one. So we have our first one done. Now we're gonna repeat the process, and we're gonna start building ourselves little rows here of flying geese. So I'm going to, side note. So you can do it, this quilt here, we did them all in the same print. So you can see this is all the same one, this is all the same one. You can do that, or you can mix them up. You can do every other one. You can do them scrappy. It doesn't matter, whatever look you like the best. When you cut down your layer cake, you can use your layer cake, and you're going to have multiples of the same prints. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process and make some more of these and then sew them into a row. And from there, we're gonna go into pinwheels and then construction. Let's do it. So I just finished making a few more of our flying geese here. And the way that I'm going to do them is I'm gonna alternate every other one being the same fabric. So these right here obviously are all the same print in each one of these flying geese in the quilt behind me. But these right here, I'm gonna do one from this print, one from this print, and kind of alternate them. Again, make it your own, do whatever you think looks best, okay? So now that I have these done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square them up. Now, you don't have to have any specialty tools for this. If you do have a block lock, this right here is a great option. You set it down on top, it locks into place, and you trim off anything around the edges to square it up. You can also just square it up traditionally, whatever works for you. If you have the tool, use it though. In our next step, I'm also gonna show you another tool that you can use. Again, it's one of those things like a lot of people have them sitting in their sewing room, they don't use them, they forget that they have them, or they forget to use them. Now's the time to get those out, okay? So if you have a block lock, go ahead and trim up your flying geese, and then what you're going to do is you're going to sew them together in a row. So I'm gonna trim these, then sew them together. That will create this block right here, and then we will go on to the pinwheel block. So stay tuned. Blocks are trimmed, let's sew them together. You're gonna sew these together in a row, just like you would any other row. So I'm gonna sew this to this, this to this, this to this, go from there. So I'm gonna take them right sides together. Again, this is the time that you can play with how you want these rotated. You could do two facing this way, two facing the other way, whatever you want. Perfect little point right there. And we're going to do the next one. Final one going on here. So I just finished and pressed our flying geese here. And look, even mine. So I have one that's perfect, one that's perfect. This one, I lost the very top of my tip a little bit. It's all right, okay? This one is ready for the quilt. Obviously, you're gonna repeat that many more times to the quilt behind me. But we're gonna go on to the next block in the quilt, which is our pinwheel block. Now, pinwheels are super easy. They're one of like the fundamental blocks of the quilting industry. So we're gonna start on them. And again, my quilt has, I'm alternating every other fabric here for my flying geese. I'm gonna do the exact same thing for my pinwheels instead of making them all the same color. It's up to you, you get to do what you want. So I'm gonna take them here. I like this one. I'm gonna grab this little fox print right here. I'm also going to grab this white on white, and we are going to make some half square triangles. Now, half square triangles are simple. What you're going to do, you're gonna take one of your fabrics, you're gonna put it right side down on your cutting mat, and you're going to mark a line diagonal across, using my mom's favorite marking device today. There you go. And what you're gonna do is you're going to take this and you have a line. Now, you're gonna set down your background fabric, you're gonna set down your fabric that you've just marked right on top, and those are obviously right sides together, and you're gonna sew a 1/4 inch seam on each side of your line. That makes your half square triangles, which then turns into your pinwheel block. So let's go ahead and do that now. You're gonna get to the end, you can cut your thread, flip it around, and you're sewing down that 1/4 inch seam on the other side as well. Now here's where the half square triangle magic happens. So we're gonna take this, we're going to cut it in half on that line that we've made. Again, guys, just simple half square triangle construction here. Grab your rotary cutter, grab your ruler, cut it in half. You can use your specialty tools if you have them. If not, you're just gonna square these up once you're done. For anybody that's familiar, you're gonna take your Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. This is my favorite notion. I'll say that a million times over, my favorite notion on the market. What this does, I'll show you here, is it cuts off your dog ears and squares up your block before you even open it and press it. So you're gonna take your Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer, you set it on top. It has a line right here that shows your seam, and it has a bottom line that shows the bottom of your fabric. So you're gonna set this on there, you're gonna line up your seam right there, you press down, and this trims off your blocks into the size that you need. Then what you're going to do is you are going to put your rotary cutter down in this little slit right here, and you're going to clip off your dog ears. So when you lift it up, your block is now trimmed and squared and ready to be put into your quilt. So you're gonna repeat this process and make 4 of these, which will give us enough to make our pinwheel block. So I'm gonna do that right now, and then we'll be back. My blocks are trimmed and pressed, so we're gonna put them together. And what you're gonna do is, to put together your pinwheel, the way I always remember it is you never have your focal piece, so not your background fabric, your fabric from your layer cake, touching another piece of layer cake. So when you're setting these down on your design area, so I'm gonna set this like this. Now I know nothing can touch this that is from the layer cake. So my next one, I can't go like this, right? I can't go like this, okay? That way it's not touching on that whole edge. Same thing on this side. Last one there, like that, okay? So it's creating, you wanna make it look like they're spinning to the left, okay? So that's what this looks like here. So now that I have these here, I'm gonna sew them together, and then as you can see, that will go together to make our finished total block. So I'm gonna sew these together, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the last little piece. First half is sewn together. I'm gonna do the other half now. I've got both of my sides here. Now I'm going to put them together and finish off our block. Okay, so I've just sewn my 4 blocks together here, and we're gonna open these up and I'm going to press this so we have our finished block. So my pinwheel is done. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to combine these together. As you can see, this is done in long rows, and we're going to sew one of our flying geese to a pinwheel, flying geese to a pinwheel, etc. Now, again, this is where your creativity comes into play, because as you can see in this quilt, the flying geese that are here match the blocks that are next to them. My version is scrappy, so I'm not doing it exactly that way, but you have so many different options that you can do. So I'm gonna take one of my pinwheel blocks, and I'm going to sew it to one of my scrappy flying geese. Now, neither one of these have the same prints in them, so I'm keeping it very scrappy. Like I said, you can match them together, make it yours, okay? So these are going to be right sides together. Okay guys, so I just finished my seam here. We're gonna press this, and this is the start of what will be our rows, okay? This is a very versatile quilt. You can do it in so many different variations based on the fabrics used, based on how you put the fabrics, based on how you put your flying geese. If I come over here, this is just like this quilt behind me, but let's say I did it the other direction. Or I do all of them alternating every single time, or these are both facing away from each other instead of pointing to each other. However you decide to do it, it's up to you, you can do it. Like I said, this quilt has a special story because when I handed it to someone that didn't ever do quilting or hadn't ever done quilting, she came back and said, hey, I did this. You can too, guys. Go into your stash, go into your local quilt store, get on our website, and get yourself a layer cake and some background fabrics and make this quilt. Even if you've never quilted before, if you've been watching the channel, you're like, hey man, one day I'm gonna make one of these quilts, now is the time to do it. As I said, down in the description below, you have your free pattern and you have links to all the things that I've used in this tutorial today. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Brody, teaching you how to sew like a pro. We'll see you next time here at Sew Yeah Quilting.